Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
What is going on, Alex? It is October. Football is in the air, and it feels like the Gamecocks are having some positive momentum, not only on the field, but also maybe in recruiting. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But Alex, quickly, what were your thoughts on the last week of college football? I'm going to give you some scores here and feel free to pop in whenever. But obviously everything went off the rails Friday with that Virginia Tech Miami game. What was your take on that?
That was wild. I mean, do you think it was a catch?
I think it was a catch. I think it was a touchdown. And I think that a call was made from Vegas, from somewhere, somebody, but that's a catch all day long.
I go back and forth on if it was a catch or not, but I mean that ending of that game was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely captured the national audience. That's for sure. And Saturday on game day, I mean, I think that they opened up with that. If you watch the show on ESPN, I think it's a tough break for Virginia Tech. I think it's a tough break for ultimately the Gamecock fans, because they kind of feel like, oh my gosh, it happened again. But I guess I would remind everybody that it happens. Referees aren't perfect. And look, it's not the Gamecocks, so they're only ones that get, the short end of the stick sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I think it kind of just brought it back for South Carolina fans. But, that game, the Miami Virginia Tech game, led into a game, or, had the whole Saturday afternoon to watch football, which was, nice, and a whole bunch of good games I know we're going to kind of get into, especially a couple of these SEC ones.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Alex. I know you had a couple of days off, just trying to regroup because, dude, I don't think you've had a day off in 6 months. But, it was really nice to be able to check some things off your to-do list, watch football as you wanted, and not have a big game that you're kind of setting yourself up for. I'm just looking through the scores right now. We'll start in the SEC. I think it's the best way to go. Texas versus Mississippi State. I don't think anyone really thought that Mississippi State stood a chance. I was surprised that Texas didn't win by more, but I think this is also that kind of.
For a little while.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I thought it would for a long time.
Yeah, the end of the first half, it was 14-6. Then it was 21-6. It was a game where I think that people need to remember that when a backup quarterback comes in, no matter how highly recruited that guy is, and what his last name is, it's still a backup quarterback making his first start in an SEC game, and the SEC is tough. It's a tough conference. So, for Mississippi State, maybe it was a heartbreaker. Maybe you thought you had some positive momentum at the end of the first half. Wasn't meant to be. LSU 42-10 over South Alabama. I mean, yawn. Who really cares? We all kind of figured that was going to happen. Oklahoma and Auburn, I thought, was a pretty fun game. I don't know how much of it you got to watch, but 7-0 in the first quarter, Oklahoma winning, and then Auburn took a 14-7 lead into halftime. And then after that, Oklahoma just kind of poured it on. Did you have any takeaways from that game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Auburn was going to get it done. I mean, you watched, it seemed like they were doing just enough to get by on that one, and then they had that pick six, and Oklahoma took it all the way back. And you just, for Auburn, you feel like you just gave that one away, and one that you really needed, because and you look at their schedule. I mean, they got Georgia this week. I'm interested to watch where this Auburn season goes.
Yeah, and it's especially important when you look at the recruiting rankings, and Auburn is clearly, one of the top recruiting teams in the country, not just the SEC right now. And the Gamecocks have at least one player in Jared Smith that they love to peel away from Auburn. So we'll see what happens. The A&M Arkansas game, Arkansas jumped on them in the first quarter, 14-7. And then kind of what I thought would happen, that Texas A&M pulled away. I'm not sure if I know how good either of these teams are right now. Arkansas is that I hate to say it, but like it's like that try hard team in the SEC that you see that they're trying. They have not quit on their coach, and a lot of people thought that Sam Pittman might actually get fired pretty early on in this season, especially with Bobby Petrino coming back home, but hasn't been the case. But you got Arkansas at 3-2, A&M at 4-1. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, I think with Arkansas, like they're going to look back at these two games that they've lost to Oklahoma State and A&M as opportunities that they kind of like the Auburn game we are just talking about, kind of just let slip through. Like probably should have beaten Oklahoma State, and you're right there at Texas A&M, and you kind of took the point I was going to say. Like we still, and a lot of teams, not just these two, but we still don't know too much about these two teams, and we still need to learn some more. But South Carolina's going to keep up with Texas A&M because they got them later on the schedule, and when they're coming to Williams-Brice. But I think that's definitely two teams that to keep an eye on just to see where those seasons go.
Yeah, I mean, there's the last two games we talked about. Oklahoma, getting the job done, and then A&M getting the job done. They're both on the Gamecocks schedule, and the Gamecocks, I know they traveled to Oklahoma. Is A&M a home game? Do you remember, Alex?
Yeah, Texas A&M comes to Columbia.
I mean, I'm just looking at it right now, and I think both of those games are winnable for South Carolina. We'll talk about them on those specific weeks, but
yeah, Oklahoma's defense is really, really good, which is not surprising under Brent Venables. But I think they have some question marks offensively, especially at quarterback, that they're still trying to figure out. So, still a few weeks away from that game, but I think that was going to be interesting. And A&M is just so long down the road that you don't know what both teams are going to look like. But I think it's a game that South Carolina will have a chance in.
Absolutely. And the two other big games in the SEC this weekend, we'll go ahead and do the Alabama-Georgia game. I did not see literally anything in that game going the way it went. No. That was wild.
You saw, Alabama jump out to the big lead, and you're like, I don't know if Georgia's going to get back in this one. And sure enough, they did. Like I was kind of bouncing back and forth between some games, and next thing I know, like Georgia's right back in it, and driving to get to a one-score game, and the next thing you know, they take the lead, and then Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams just did their thing. Like those two are really, really good, and Ryan Williams it's not like a freshman. So I thought. That his last touchdown reception was insane. Like where he just run down the field and jukes the two guys out. Like he's insane.
It's unbelievable, and it's unfair that dude is 17 years old. Yeah. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's not fair, but like this is one of those games. Like I don't know if you remember this, Alex. I mean, I'm sure you do. You're not that young, but a couple of years ago when the Patriots came back and beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And like, I know you're a Falcons guy. I get it. I know.
Thanks for bringing that up.
But no, like where I'm going with this, Alex, is that night I went to sleep. Like, I don't even know if I watched I think I went to sleep after the halftime show, and I woke up to like 100 text messages from people talking about the game. Couldn't believe what happened, all of that. And I was this close to going to sleep. I was like, okay, it's an 18-point game, whatever it was, in like the late third quarter. And I was like, and we'd had a busy weekend. We had been to Charleston. We'd had family stuff, all kinds of things. And it was like the one game that I told my wife, I was like, we're going to watch this. Like, we're watching this game. It's number 2 versus number 4. Like, just wait until, Alabama plays Dixieland Delight. Like, it's going to be awesome. And she was like yawning. I mean, like, this is the game you wanted to watch.
Right. Like, when you look at that Alabama-Georgia game, who'd you come away more impressed with? Like, I know it sounds because Alabama won the game, but I think there's some things you can take away from both teams in that.
I'm really glad that Carolina only has to play one of them this year. I'll put it that way. I was insanely impressed with the atmosphere in Tuscaloosa. Mm-hmm. Insanely impressed that they got up 21-0 after the first quarter, 28 to whatever it was 7. I think that it was 7 because they went for 2. Had a penalty or something, and then just the way that Alabama jumped all over them and they were like mentally prepared was super impressive to me. The way that Georgia fought back, and I think it shows a lot about coaching staffs. I mean, Kirby after the first touchdown was willing to go for 2. I mean, I don't know how many 4th down calls Georgia had that converted. I think at one point they were like 4 for 4 or 5 for 5. Like, it was it was a situation where like Alabama, I think, was saying like, okay, it's impossible for them to come back. Let's just play prevent. Let's keep everything in front of us. Let's just melt this clock away. And Georgia just didn't quit. For Georgia, I mean, you look at that score, 41-34, right? And for Georgia to only have the lead for 13 seconds with the way that game played out, I'm so impressed with both of those teams. I think I even said it on the Big Spur. I was like in some different threads, and I was like, look, I'm just insanely impressed with both of these teams. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to get a rematch at some point, whether it's, SEC championship or the playoffs. But like to do what both teams did at different points of the game, they're the two best teams I've seen in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Kalen DeBoer passed his first big test as Alabama's head coach. Like, I mean, as you mentioned, they were prepared. Like, they came out, just ready to go and were ready for everything Georgia threw at him. And, I thought Carson Beck was okay. Like, he took some heat early on in that game. But, for the most part, at the end, I was impressed with the way he kind of stayed in that game and kind of fought back and kind of led Georgia into that. Because it was not great for him early on. And a lot of that, some of that was on him. Some of that was just Alabama was really, really like on point with defensively. But, he got him back into that game. And, I thought just overall that was, probably going to be one of the better games that happens all year.
Yeah. And for so long, it didn't look like it was going to be a good game. I mean, Carson Beck came out in the second half like a man possessed. But, the national media has talked about this game all weekend. Everybody saw it. We don't have to spend much more time on it, but just like the Ryan Williams kid, I think he'd be a top 10 pick in the draft right now. And it's insane that he's going to have 2 more years of college football. The last big game I think we need to talk about around the SEC, probably the game that outside of Georgia, Alabama, most Gamecock fans watched. And it was Kentucky beating Ole Miss at Ole Miss 20-17. Alex, I know you've been on a couple shows. You've talked about it. I know you and Joe talked about it Sunday night when I couldn't be on the show. But real quick, what were your takeaways from that? And what does it mean as we preview this upcoming game for South Carolina?
Yeah, obviously was really impressed with Kentucky to go into Oxford and win. I think it was on Friday the news came out that Maxwell Hairston was going to be out with Kentucky's top cornerback and probably a potential first-round pick guy. And so you wondered when he went out, you're like, is Kentucky's secondary going to be able to hold up against Ole Miss's receivers? And, they did really well. Like, Trey Harris had a really good game. And, I think that guy's going to – he's going to have games like that all year, really. He's really, really good. But, Kentucky, I think, kind of showed South Carolina ways that, different ways that you can attempt to slow down Ole Miss's offense. I think, Lane Kiffin and Shane Beamer both kind of mentioned, like, Kentucky and South Carolina's defense are not too similar. Like, they have a lot of differences. Like, you think on the defensive line, like Kentucky's loaded on the interior and South Carolina is too. Like, they got some good guys, but I think South Carolina's edge guys are, maybe a step up. And so I think that's going to be really something interesting to watch as, Ole Miss's offensive line, I think, struggled a little bit in that game. And that, I think that's key is like Jackson Dart needs to have time to sit back in the pocket and find those open receivers. And, I think Kentucky showed that, you can get some pressure on them, which going into this game is going to be key to not, let him just sit in that pocket and pick your secondary apart with his receivers. So, I thought there was a lot of interesting points that South Carolina can kind of look at in this game and maybe draw up a game plan for how they can find a way to go win.
Yeah, I look at it, and JC has said this for years. Like a Mark Stoops Kentucky team is just a spider, and it gets you caught in their web, and that's exactly what they did. And it was one of my biggest concerns with South Carolina going to Lexington that early in the season. And, I think it says a lot about what South Carolina was able to do against Kentucky. I think that Kentucky was shell-shocked. I think that when you look at their past couple games, they played 3 games since the South Carolina game. The Georgia game, they took Georgia to the wire. We just saw what Georgia did against Alabama. They had the cupcake thrown in there, but then to do what they did on the road against Ole Miss, I think that was their wake-up call. I'll be honest, Alex, I don't know if South Carolina beats Kentucky by 25 points. If they were to play this week, whether it's in Lexington or it's in Columbia, I think that Kentucky is getting better. But yeah, it just sets up a wild weekend in Columbia coming up. This game, I believe, is it on ESPN or ABC?
ESPN.
3:30. So ESPN, ESPN at 3:30. We're going to talk about that game here in a moment. But before we get there, I'm going to hit a word from our sponsors. We love them so much. So let me go ahead and get that up. Alex, maybe you might have to do it. I'm still learning how to produce. This is hilarious. All right. We're gonna do a D's Wings promo. Let's go ahead and hit that right now.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. You know, when I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more. Now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia, yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia. Mike here for one of the better dining options.
Alex, I know that you are a fan of D's Wings. I'm a fan of D's Wings, and we're all fans of Mike Morgan. So if you're out in Columbia, make sure you head out to D's Wings. Can't find a better sports bar. So anyway, Alex, want to move on really quick before we get to our Ole Miss Kentucky preview. It seems like things are swirling right now in recruiting circles when it comes to the Gamecocks. Obviously, there was some big news earlier today. If you don't mind, how about you just give us a little recap of the day, the past couple of weeks, and what you see happening for the Gamecocks and their upcoming recruiting class this season?
Yeah, so had some movement with some 2026 wide receivers today. First of all, kind of earlier in the day, Donovan Murphy, 2026 wide receiver at Irmo High School, reclassified up to 2025. So, that's pretty notable just because that speeds up his recruiting process now, being that he's reclassifying, and he'll be in for the game this weekend against Ole Miss. Geez, about to say LSU against Ole Miss. But and then later this evening, Malik Clark, who, pretty much everybody who follows Gamecock recruiting knows about, had been committed to Florida State since the summer, and now he's backed off that commitment to Florida State. And, I think I believe he'll be in this weekend for the game. He will be in this weekend for the game. So a lot of movement and recruiting going on right now.
Yeah, when it comes to Murph, he's the kid that I saw in the summer. Alex, you did as well at Gamecock 7-on-7s. I can't help but think that he's seeing what, Ryan Matthews is doing in Alabama and saying, hey, I can do that too. I know there was an article that came out today that mentioned, just accelerating his first paycheck, which is something that obviously helps families out. And look, you and I both would do the same thing if we had the opportunity to help our families. But do you think he's a kid that is ready to be a 2025 or not commitment? I shouldn't say that, but recruit.
Yeah, I think so. Like you mentioned, we saw him in camp, and I think of all the wide receivers that we saw there, and that's not just 2026 wide receivers, that's 2025, 26, 27. He was one of the more impressive ones that we saw out there. He's just fast. And, I think we talked about that 2026 wide receiver class, he and Gidron, who I know we'll get to in a little bit, but those are just really, really talented receivers. So, I'm interested to see just kind of how that process plays out with him.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. You don't put it this way. I don't think that you bump yourself up into, the 2025 recruiting class if you don't have a good idea where you're going. And look, I talked to the kid. I don't think that means South Carolina 100%. He went to Texas, he went to Florida, he went to LSU, he's been to Alabama. He was at the Alabama-Georgia game. Who knows what was told to him when he was, out and about this past weekend. But just interesting. You don't see that very often. And I've always said that if there's a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, a defensive lineman that's a junior that is a player that clearly is ready to go to the next level, I see it in basketball all the time, but like, why not reclass? I mean, even if you redshirt your first year, and I'm not saying Donovan Murph is a redshirt candidate. I don't think he is. I think he's really freaking good at football. But, I think you're going to start seeing this more and more in college football the same way you see it in college basketball. Alex, do you think I'm crazy for that? Or, what do you think when it comes to like accelerating your clock? Because in the NBA, your second contract is the contract you're looking for. It's the same thing in the NFL, but like, am I crazy for thinking these kids that are already developed should go ahead and try and reclassify if they can?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I mean, like, you think about it, if he gets into college a year early, it means he's got a chance to get into the NFL a year earlier, which, you just, in these days in the NFL, like at any position, really, you just don't know how much time in the NFL you're going to have. So I think, the earlier you get in there, the chance of, more years you can have in the NFL, and the earlier you can go ahead and start making a lot of money playing NFL football. So, I think, maybe it's going to be interesting to see kind of here moving forward if that becomes even more of a trend, especially in the days of NIL.
Yeah, because I mean, I think NIL is kind of what sparked that for me, that whole conversation, and especially running backs. Like, running back is the one position I feel like on the football field that you don't need to have so much seasoning to be effective. And on top of that, you want to split carries. You only have so many carries on your legs before your legs give out. I mean, so many studies have shown that. And wide receivers, another, and very similar to that, I think quarterback, like, why not go play in a college program for a year? Even if you redshirt as a 17-year-old freshman, you're still having the opportunity to learn, watch, and just be on the field sooner than you would if you stayed in your actual class. But enough about that. I want to talk quickly about Malik Clark. Look, I think that you and I can both say it was a stunner when he committed to Florida State back in whatever it was. Golly, was it July? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that, at that time, there was a sense that he might want to go to a bigger name, a bigger brand. And he might have had some people in his ear that were steering him that way. I don't want everyone to think like, okay, Malik Clark is a lock for South Carolina, but Alex, it really feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously some momentum with South Carolina here with Malik Clark. I mean, he was at the Akron game, hanging out with the staff before the game and stayed for the game, and then coming back this weekend too. That's been planned, this weekend. So that was, and then find out that he decommitted. It just seems like there's a lot of momentum and a lot of steam in South Carolina's favor here in this one.
Do you think it's a situation where South Carolina would take both Donovan Murph and Malik Clark in this class?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't think you're going to pass on either of those guys if you can get them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think that with having, I think it's Jordan Gidron out of Columbia, or no, he's not from Columbia. Where's he from in the upstate?
Yeah, he's from Columbia. He goes to Ridgeview.
Yeah, from Columbia. It's not bad to put a year between, whichever of those two wide receivers may potentially be a part of the class. I think that only increases South Carolina's story. Do you think South Carolina's in a good spot with Jordan Gidron?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's been around for a couple games already, and he's coming back this weekend for the LSU. I keep saying LSU for the Ole Miss.
Yeah, game. LSU's on everyone's mind. It's okay.
Yeah, so I mean, he's coming back. So I mean, it seems like South Carolina seems to be in a pretty good spot here. Not, I wouldn't say early on his recruitment because it's only a 2026, but it seems like they've kind of put themselves in a good spot here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Anything on the Skinner kid who decommitted from Cincinnati? I know he's been to pretty much every Gamecock game, whether home or away so far.
Yeah, I don't have anything new on him right now. I guess we'll kind of see, what his. I haven't seen what his visit plans are for the weekend, but I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah. So who else is coming in this weekend, Alex? I know that Hale put up a list on the Big Spur. Again, if you're not a member of the Big Spur, what are you waiting for? Seriously, like, you get to see Alex's notes and reports every day. You don't have to wait till Tuesdays to hear from Alex.
Yeah, so obviously make sure to go check out the Big Spur. Hale McGranahan's got a running list right now of who he's got up. Just a couple of names that to throw out there. Shadarius Tootle, who's a Auburn linebacker commitment, is going to be in 2026 guy who's going to be in. So I mean, I think he's a top 100 player. So that's pretty noteworthy. You got some offensive linemen coming in, and Trey Aiken out of Clinton, South Carolina, who's South Carolina's offer. You got Bear McWhorter, who's a guy who they're going after, and then Akeem Agboko too he'll be in too, and he's a guy who saw in the summer at camp, and he's a composite 5-star in that 2026 class and ranked number 21 overall player in the country. So it's going to be a loaded list of recruits. It already is, and I imagine that list is only going to continue to grow here.
Well, I think that takes us well into this weekend. This weekend, Gamecocks have Ole Miss. Gosh, Alex, I almost want to say LSU, like you were doing.
I don't know why.
Throw me off, but so the Gamecocks do have Ole Miss coming in. Obviously for Gamecock fans, Juice Wells, Antoine Juice Wells is a Ole Miss rebel now. I think that a lot of the storyline in the offseason was all about, oh my gosh, we just want to beat Juice Wells, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's the narrative's kind of changed. It hasn't gone completely away. Do you think that Juice Wells is going to be a big key to the potential win or loss for the Gamecocks this weekend?
It'll be interesting to see because in that Kentucky game, I don't think he had a catch, and I'm not sure how many times he's targeted. Maybe one or two. I think he was targeted twice, maybe, but didn't have any receptions in that game. So, but it kind of goes back to Kentucky's game plan in that one. Like they just limited Ole Miss's plays. Really, I think they ran in the 50s, which is kind of low for Ole Miss just with their up tempo style. So I mean, they and he's not the only really good receiver. I mean, they got who I mentioned, Trey Harris earlier, and then they got tight end Caden Prescorn, who's really good. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how he's used in this one and kind of what the motivation is, I guess, on both sides.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of people, and some people say like, "Oh, Lane Kiffin's like this wizard that's going to make sure that Juice Wells gets like a touchdown or has a big game against South Carolina." And that might be true, but I don't think that's really how coaches think. I think coaches just think about winning the game. And would it be great for Lane Kiffin if, Juice Wells catches the winning pass that destroys the Gamecocks and their hearts? I don't know. But, like moving into the game, I think that you mentioned it earlier, but getting pressure on Jackson Dart is something that I think they're going to have to do. I don't think Jackson Dart is that mobile. I think that he's somebody the Gamecocks can get after if that's the game plan, which I think it has to be.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like if you let Jackson Dart sit there in the pocket with no pressure, and give those receivers time to find open spaces in the secondary, like he can pick you apart. So I think that's, if not one of the biggest, if not the biggest key to this game for South Carolina is to pressure Jackson Dart. And if you can get there with 4, that's big just because you can drop more back in coverage. So I think absolutely that's a huge key in this game is to find ways to get pressure. Even if you're not able to sack them, just, affect them in the pocket a little bit.
So far this year, Alex, South Carolina has been in some ways a big play offense. Like there's not a lot of long, consistent drives. There's not a lot of third down conversions. Do you think that this is a game where the Gamecocks can win that way and just score points in bunches, or is that put more pressure on the defense to hold Ole Miss down because we know Ole Miss can score?
Yeah, I think ideally you'd like to go on long drives just to keep Ole Miss's offense off the field. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're really going to care how they score or how quick they score. Just, because you're putting points on the board, you're going to make Ole Miss have to score against you. And kind of going to that point, I think another key for South Carolina is to limit explosive plays by Ole Miss. And that's going back to the Kentucky game. That's exactly what they did. Just didn't. I think Ole Miss had a few explosives, which Lane Kiffin offense is going to have a lot of going to get their explosive plays. So I think that's another key is just limit their explosive plays and win the time of possession battle. Which if you do what you need to do in that game, you're going to just because of the tempo Ole Miss runs. But just limit those explosive plays and make Ole Miss, if they're going to score, and you make Ole Miss drive down the field. And when they get into the red zone, find ways to hold them to field goals.
I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up, and I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with the Alabama-Georgia game and even the LSU-South Carolina game. If you're going to play in this type of game, big game, top, I don't know what you know what Ole Miss is ranked right now, Alex? Let's just say top 15.
I think 12, I think.
Yeah, so top 15 in the country. It doesn't matter if you get up 17-0. It doesn't matter if you get up 21-0. It doesn't matter if you're up 28-7. Good teams are going to come back. and good teams aren't just going to tuck their tail and hide. And I think a lot of Gamecock fans thought the LSU game, and maybe some Gamecock players did as well, that, okay, we got them on the ropes. This game is over. Like, the game's not over. And I think when you look at this 9-point spread, I think it's the last I saw was 9 points, Alex, Ole Miss being favored. It's, if you think this game's going to be over in the second quarter or the third quarter, like, I think you're wrong unless the Gamecocks just get blown out, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and I meant to ask you this earlier on that point spread. One, were you surprised by that point spread? And two, do you think it moves before Saturday afternoon?
I was definitely surprised. I think that a lot of the point spread right now has to do with the uncertainty around Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders. And look, Shane ain't going to say anything he doesn't have to say. And there's a good chance that we don't know, Alex. I mean, like, you and I are pretty plugged in. We hear stuff. But I think there's a good chance that we're walking into the stadium. You know, you get there about 3 hours early. I get there about 45 minutes early. But I don't know the status of Lenoris or Rocket. And I think the only thing that moves that line down is if Rocket Sanders and Lenora Sellers are active and it comes out. Like, we'll see when Shane Beamer puts out his weekly, health report, whatever the SEC is calling it right now. But I haven't heard anything right now to tell me that, like, they're not going to play, but I also haven't heard they're going to play. And I think that's what's holding that line at 9.
Yeah, I agree. And just to read what Shane Beamer said today about those guys on Lenoris, he said he was good today, did everything in practice. And then he was asked about Rocket Sanders, and he said Lenoris and Rocket were both out there. They both looked good. Were they 100%? I wouldn't say they were 100%. They both told me they felt great and looked good. They'll both be able to do even more tomorrow, I would think, as well. And then he mentioned Jared Brown was out there too, as well. So I think with that, it's just we'll find out kind of Wednesday or tomorrow night with that availability report that comes out around 8. We'll kind of gain an idea as to where they stand, and we'll just have to kind of see. They still got a few days, to kind of continue rehabbing and getting back into full speed.
Yeah, and I think that from everything I know about Rocket, from everything I know about Lenoris, like, if they give the Gamecocks the best opportunity to win the game and they're healthy, I think you're going to see them in Williams-Brice Stadium at 3:30 on Saturday. Yeah. But, okay, so, Alex, talking about that line, and it's Ole Miss -9. Does your mind change much about the Gamecocks prospects if those two guys are out?
I guess a little bit, just because those two are really dynamic players, and we saw what Robbie could do last week against 2 weeks ago against Akron. But if Robbie does indeed have to play, if that is the case, it's obviously taking a big step up in the competition. So I think he's got it on the leg or on the ground. So I'm interested to see. We'll have to see, but I think I think if you asked anybody, if those two guys are out, I think it maybe takes your confidence level just down a little bit, just on the fact that those two are really good players.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And it's hard because, like, right now we're going to have to give our predictions. We're going to have to predict what's going to happen in this game. Let me go ahead and pull it up really quick. Alex, while we gather our thoughts, because I don't know where I'm going yet, so I'm delaying. Other SEC games this week. Missouri travels to Texas A&M. Missouri is 9th in the country, A&M 25th. That line is A&M -2, over under 48.5. Auburn travels to Athens, and they will face the Georgia Bulldogs. That line is Georgia -24, over under 53.5. The Gamecocks, we've talked about them a lot tonight. Ole Miss travels to Columbia, South Carolina. Ole Miss right now is -9 with an over-under of 52.5. Alabama goes to Nashville. Alabama is a 23-point favorite over the Commodores of Vanderbilt and 55.5-point over-under. And then you move over to Arkansas, Tennessee. The Volunteers head to the Razorbacks' home turf, Fayetteville, Arkansas. Tennessee -13.5, over-under 59.5. And then Florida somehow has another game against a non-SEC opponent. Central Florida heads to Gainesville. Central Florida is a 3-point favorite with an over-under of 61.5. But we're going to talk about our best bet segments. I'm sure that some of those games will pop up there. But Alex, I guess it's time for brass tacks. Our predictions for this Ole Miss South Carolina game. I'll go first. I'll just do it. Age before beauty, I guess is what they say. But man, it's tough. I don't think that Robbie Ashford is a net negative for the Gamecocks. I'll put it that way. I think that he can get the job done. I think that the Gamecocks are going to have to get a running game, and they're going to have to cause a couple turnovers. We talked about this in the offseason, Alex. Ole Miss beats up on their non-conference opponents, and then when they get in the SEC play, especially under Lane Kiffin, it hasn't been a situation where they just boat race people. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think that 9 points is too much for Ole Miss unless it's just a absolute blitz where Ole Miss just gets up 21-0 in the first quarter, and then everyone Williams-Brice is just sitting on their hands and doesn't know what to do. I don't think South Carolina can overcome a 21-0 deficit type of situation. I think it's going to be a close game. I think that Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders play. I don't know to the level of effectiveness. I wouldn't be surprised to see Robbie Ashford mix in there with Lenore Sellers because Robbie definitely has some wheels. I think that they showed a lot of things earlier in the season that shows like the triple option, different ways that they can keep the ball in their hands. If Lenore's doesn't play, if Rocket doesn't play, I think Ole Miss wins by 5 or 6. I think that if they both play, I see the Gamecocks winning this game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a 33-27 type game. So I think Rocket and Lenore's are worth 12 points, in the overall difference in the game. So I'm gonna take South Carolina to win. I'm gonna say 31-28.
Okay. So going back to what we've talked about, multiple times here, I think the biggest key in this game is finding ways to pressure Jackson Dart the way that Kentucky did, and kind of just not using the same blueprint just because we talked about, two different defenses between South Carolina and Kentucky. But, I think, kind of going to your point, if Lenore's and Rocket do end up playing, I think it's going to go back and forth just because Ole Miss is going to be motivated to come back out in this one and I guess kind of make a statement after having a home loss to Kentucky. But, I think it goes back and forth, but I'm going to go a late field goal by South Carolina in the fourth quarter gives South Carolina a 27-24 win.
I love it. Obviously, that really helps us out actually for this show. We'll get some more viewers and we have some really good stuff to talk about next week. But that's not how we roll here. But we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, Alex and I will get to our best bets. And I promised Alex I would get him out of here as soon as possible because the Braves do have a playoff game tonight, and I'm sure all of you want to watch that as well. So one more break from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Welcome home. That's what the Gamecocks say, and so does nationally recognized the Barndominium Company, where they are building dream homes in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Their turnkey process can be custom designed and takes 6 months on average. Make your dream a reality. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. Thebarndominiumco.com.
All right, Alex, we are back, and I think there's actually a vice presidential debate tonight as well, so you might have to get 2 screens going. But anyway, my phone's buzzing about that and the Braves. Let's move into our best bet segment of the week, and you can tell by the smile that's about to come on Alex's face that he loves this segment. It's why he now has a Ferrari, actually, if you didn't know. Alex has a Ferrari.
That's news to me, but okay. I'll take it.
But coming into last week, Alex was 13-7 overall. Last week, Alex 2-3. Not a good week for you. I think it's your first losing week, or maybe your second. But
we're going to bounce back.
But Alex is still 15-10 on the season. Can't complain with that. I mean, just jailbreaking every single casino in Vegas. I was 12-8 coming into last week. I finished 2-2-1. I actually had one push, which that's fine. Give me my $5 back. I'll take it. So Alex is 14-10 on the season, or I'm sorry, 15-10 on the season. I am 14-10-1. So I guess that'd be like a half game back in Major League Baseball standings.
Yeah, you're catching me here.
I'm closing in, man. Phil, actually, we told you that Phil would not be here for this week of content if he went 5-0, but he went 4-1. So I guess you'll see Phil later on. Really quick before we go past this, everyone that's been affected by this storm, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We hope that power returns. I have my brother in Greenville. He's in Florence, where I'm from right now. Dealing with all this weather. It's really the ramifications of the weather, but just know our thoughts and prayers are with all of you guys. And if you need help, please let us know. We'll try and help you in any way we can. But and Phil obviously is going through that too. So our thoughts and prayers are with Phil and everyone that watches and listens to this show. So Alex, let's go on to our best bets. Let's try and make some people money at this point in the show. Like I said, Alex is 15-10. I'm 14-10-1. I'm trying to catch you this week. What is your first pick, Alex?
All right. I think I'm going to go with the one that maybe I'm most confident about. Alabama covers the 23.5 point spread over Vandy.
I'm going to write that one down. Bama minus 23.5. Most confident. Most confident, right?
I think so. Yeah, we'll go with it.
I'm good with that. I think that Alabama found a second gear. I don't think that Vanderbilt can stick with Bama like Georgia came back in their effort. So I don't hate that one. So I'm going to go with my first pick. My game is Missouri at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 2-point favorite at home against Missouri. The over-under is at 48.5. I'll be honest. I don't know who's going to win this game. I don't think Missouri is quite as good as they were last year. And I don't think Texas A&M is that good either. I mean, they're a good team. They're probably like top 40 in the country, but I don't think they're number 25 in the country. I don't think Missouri is number 9 in the country. So I'm going to take the under 48.5, and I would actually sprinkle Missouri -2 on this one. I think Missouri gets it done somehow, some way.
So I'm actually going to go against you on that.
No.
I picked A&M to cover the 2-point spread, and they're going to win. I think they're going to win by a touchdown.
All right, so A&M -2 at Missouri. Or no, it's at A&M. At A&M, okay. So this is when Eli Drinkowitz loses his – I don't know what I'm going with that, but he loses his coat of armor and it gets his first loss of the season. All right. My next pick is the Auburn-Georgia game. It's Auburn at Georgia. Georgia is a 24-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 53.5. I'm going to take Auburn plus 24. I mean, this is a rivalry. These are two teams that don't like each other. Emotional game from Georgia from last week. Georgia's, I think, going to win. But I want to make Georgia prove it one more time and actually beat somebody like they should, because Georgia always wins the game, but I don't know how often they actually cover the spread. So it's Auburn at Georgia. Give me the under 53.5, and call me crazy, Alex. Call me crazy. Auburn might win straight up.
Okay. I'm actually staying with
Alex is done. Alex is done with me.
I'm actually staying with the game and saying Georgia covers 24.
All right, so UGA.
I mean,
and
Auburn has questions offensively. I mean, they can't stop turning the ball over. I think you could worry about Georgia being that kind of a letdown game, but I think playing Auburn actually may help that, just because it's going to be a rivalry game. Like, I mean, for one, Kirby Smart's not going to let them be a letdown game, but I think just playing Auburn is going to help them avoid that letdown game. They're going to be ready to play and kind of make a statement again.
Yeah, it's not like they're playing Vanderbilt or somebody. They're
Right.
playing a rival. So we'll see if Auburn. I mean, I think Auburn's going to lose this game. I mean, I said sprinkle it $5 to win like 250, maybe something like that. But it's still a fun game. My next game is Clemson at Florida State, and I don't know how I feel about this one, but Clemson is a 14-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. This game, like I said earlier, will be played at Doak Campbell Stadium. It's a revenge game for DJ Ogulugulele. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But Florida State needs a game to pick themselves back up. I think it's going to be a close game. I think that this is the most talented team that Clemson has played, just in raw talent, since they played Georgia to open the season. I'm going to take Florida State plus 14. Don't know if Florida State has enough in their war chest, you could say, to win this one, but I think Florida State plus 14. I think this is like the get off the mat moment, or it gets really ugly in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of. What time is that game?
1 second, let me look. I have it right here. I thought I had it right here. I'll pull it up 1 second. So let me figure out what Clemson's ranked right now. Clemson is 15th in the country, which I would love to know how these voters vote. And it's not just a Clemson thing. It's all over the country right now. I don't understand how they vote, but that game is 7 p.m. in Doak Campbell. It's in Tallahassee. That place is going to be litty. I know. My wife went to school there. She's getting her doctorate from there. So that line is actually moved to minus 14.5, but I got it at 14. I'm going to take the 14.5. I'll take that hook since I just looked it up. But yeah, 7 p.m.
All right. Next one I have Virginia Tech's a 9-point favorite over Stanford. Virginia Tech's going to win, but Stanford covers the spread.
Okay, so Stanford plus 9. I wonder if they actually went back to the West Coast this week.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too. That's a lot of traveling.
It's a lot of traveling, and then especially when Virginia didn't get hit too hard from the storm, but I mean, I don't know how transportation works. I mean, I guess you can fly and it's not that big of a deal, but I don't hate that one, Alex. I think it's a good one.
The extra traveling would just give me a little bit of pause on that one, just because if you're going back to California then back to Virginia, like it's a lot of traveling within 7 days. But I'll stick with it and I'll go that Stanford recover.
I like it. My next one is Iowa at Ohio State. Ohio State, when I looked at it earlier, was a 20.5-point favorite, over under of 44.5. I'm going to take Ohio State minus 20.5. I think that Iowa's defense gets a lot of credit. I don't know if they're as good as they have been in the past. It's at Ohio State, and 21 points just seems like the right number. I think there's a chance for Ohio State, who might have, like, outside of the SEC, I think they have the best, roster 1 to 85 in the country. And I think it's just too much for Iowa, especially at Ohio State. So Ohio State makes a statement. Give me Ohio State minus 20.5.
All right, I like that one. All right, the last one that I have, I'm interested to see what your reaction is going to be on it. UCF wins outright at Florida. Covers the spread. Covers 3 points.
Alex, you're going to make me do it. You're going to make me do it.
UCF's favorite, I think. No, you don't have to bring that.
Let me go back.
That was a long time.
Back. All right, let me go back to my handy-dandy Phil Steele College Football Magazine, and I want to see what Alex picked. So, just to recap here, Alex, Florida Gators schedule: win against Miami, win against Samford, win against Texas A&M, win against Mississippi State, and a win against UCF. Alex, you know what? I actually admire you, because you changed your mind, but that's a good thing, because Florida ain't that good, and UCF looks pretty good. And Look, it's the same reason I say this all the time. Why the heck do we have polls before week 6 or week 7? We don't know what any of these teams are. We can read all the preseason magazines in the world, but once the games kick off, we figure it out. So I like that. I like that a lot. I'm on your side.
I'm going to have to quit picking Florida games so you don't have the opportunity to bring that up all the time.
I totally get that. My last game is Tennessee at Arkansas. Tennessee is a 13.5-point favorite. The over-under is 59.5. I don't know how many points are going to be scored in this game, but give me Tennessee minus 13.5. I think that's a good number. Tennessee might be my new Ole Miss, and I'm just going to keep betting on them until they lose. And I think they're just going to keep covering. And I would be really interested in that first quarter line, because Arkansas has played their hearts out, but they just don't have the talent that Tennessee has. So that's my take.
Yeah, that's a really interesting game, because I think I think Sam Pittman's probably going to have that team ready to play to see if they can keep up with Tennessee, but I don't know. Tennessee's firepower offensively, I think, may just end up being too much.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Well, Alex, any predictions on the Braves against the Padres? Has the game started yet?
Yeah, the Braves are down 2-0 already in the bottom of the first, so maybe I won't turn that one on now.
Yeah, well, you got to watch it. You got to watch it. So, y'all, I appreciate everyone being here. I know this is a difficult time, and when you all spend this time with us, it's the most valuable thing you have, your time. And like in a time like this, we hope that we provided a bit of a distraction for the difficulties that are going on in our state right now. We love you guys. We appreciate y'all, and we hope that things get better soon, sooner rather than later. And hopefully the Gamecocks can provide another distraction this week. So thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there. And again, if we can help in any way, please let us know. Hope you have a great rest of your evening, a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.